Mrs. Hilja Aaltonen, a well-known Finnish evangelist, poet and writer, died peacefully at the Koukkuniemi Old People's Nursing Home in the city of Tampere in western Finland on Wednesday, February the 13th, 2013. She was 105 years old. She was born as Hilja Lehtonen in the small central Finnish town of Multia in September 1907. Neither one of her parents was a born-again Christian, at least until the 1940s. She was brought up as a Lutheran. Her ambition as a young adult was to become an actress. In June or July 1930, aged 22, she was saved through the ministry of Mr. Eeli Jokinen, an evangelist of the Finnish Evangelical Free Church. This was ironic because until that time, Ms. Lehtonen had considered the Free Protestant Christians such as the Evangelical Free Churchers, Pentecostals and Baptists as abnormal. Fairly soon she joined the Finnish Evangelical Free Church. By 1934 she became convinced that God wanted her to work as a traveling evangelist. She began to preach the gospel around Finland with a friend called Hilja Nyrönen. In 1938 she married Mr. Ephraim Aaltonen, who respected her evangelistic ministry. In 1941 she gave birth to her only son and child, Jorma. The Aaltonens lived in some or several towns around western and central Finland until they settled in the western Finnish city of Tampere in 1959. For some years in the 1950s, Mrs. Aaltonen led the Seinäjoki Evangelical Free Church in western Finland. Mrs. Hilja Aaltonen was known as a poetic and image and spirit-oriented evangelist and preacher. Many of her friends were convinced that she had received from God the gift of prophecy because many of her prophecies were fulfilled. She emphasized the importance of preaching about Christ's blood because only that way people understood how their sins are forgiven. She did believe in the Holy Spirit's gifts, but she was apparently uncomfortable with the intense shouting found in many charismatic meetings. She wrote many poems and published some books during her long lifetime. Her topics ranged from her childhood memories to heavenly visions. In her books, sermons, and interviews, she emphasized the fact that there are true Christians in all denominations and evangelical movements. For many years until her death, she prayed for and prophesied about a future spiritual revival that would spread around the entire Finland shortly before Christ's return. For at least 10 or 11 years until her death, she lived at the Koukkuniemi Nursing Home in Tampere. There she received many visitors until the final months of her life. She prayed for them, counseled them, and prophesied to them. Mrs. Aaltonen was probably the last surviving prominent Finnish evangelist born before 1911.